Lay out your playmat and grab your sleeves as we upgrade the Spellslinger Starter Kit. With the release of Guilds of Ravnica, Wizards of the Coast has created a new Spellslinger Starter Kit. This kit includes 2 ready-to-play decks set up in a predetermined order to help new players learn the basics of Magic. But once we've played these decks and learned the basics, what's next? We'll be going through a few upgrades we can make to improve the decks, and we'll be keeping them standard legal in case we want to try them out at Friday Night Magic. This kit is coming out at the same time as Guilds of Ravnica, which includes the black and green Golgari Swarm and the red and white Boros Legion. Both of these color combinations are featured in the Spellslinger kit, and we have a bunch of options from the new set to add to the decks. The Boros deck features small, cheap creatures with haste, flying, and vigilance, along with direct damage spells and spells to increase our whole team's power and toughness, all in an effort to win quickly. The Golgari deck takes a bit longer to get going, but it has ways to destroy our opponent's creatures, spells that can make one of our small creatures really big, and big creatures with trample to finish the game out. Now the first thing we want to do is grab the Golgari deck, take out all those black cards, add in some blue, make it Simic, and then we can just... But what do we... If we just...
You know, Simic is in the next set. You can have your fun then.
Both decks currently feature a good number of 2-mana creatures, including several with 2 power and 2 toughness. Creatures with this combination of mana cost, power, and toughness are commonly referred to as bears based on the classic card Grizzly Bears. You'll have to bear with me during this section.
Hold on, I gotta get my bearings.
Come on, man, I barely have enough jokes to get through this. The Boros deck has cards like Sun Sentinel, Silverbeak Griffin, and Sky Terror. Each of these cards has an upside with either Vigilance, Flying, or Menace. We can team these up with other 2-drops like Knight of Grace and Goblin Trailblazer. Knight of Grace is great against the Golgari deck since it can't be targeted by their black removal spells, while Goblin Trailblazer can get around some of their biggest threats since it has Menace. On the Golgari side, we have solid 2-drops like Ursine Champion and Greenwood Sentinel, along with the less exciting Walking Corpse, which is just a plain or vanilla 2/2. While it would be decent in a zombie deck, we don't really have any synergies to make it a better fit. Some upgrades we can consider are Knight of Malice, which is good against our opponent's white-based removal spells, and Merfolk Branchwalker, which is a great way to sculpt our draws and help hit future land drops. Outside of the 2-mana creatures, there are some good utility creatures in both decks. The Boros deck has Goblin Motivator to give haste to any of our creatures that don't already have it. The rare cards in the deck also provide a lot of value, giving our team vigilance, clearing out a blocker, or getting in the last bit of damage by pumping up their power. But we can always look to get more utility. The new Mentor mechanic from Guilds of Ravnica, as seen on Barging Sergeant, Goblin Banneret, and Light of the Legion, will help make our smaller creatures bigger permanently with +1/+1 counters. Guilds of Ravnica also introduces a new cycle of Guild Mages. Legion Guild Mage can remove their best blocker from combat early in the game and become a source of damage late in the game. Kinjali Sunwing is also a strong addition that flies and causes our opponent's creatures to enter the battlefield tapped. Now, if we want to take the Boros deck to Friday Night Magic, we will have to take out the Inspiring Captain, which was originally printed in Shadows over Innistrad, which is currently not standard legal. Some good alternatives include Bellowing Aegisaur, which will put counters on all our creatures rather than just a one-time bonus, or Inspiring Unicorn, which pumps our whole team, including itself, when it attacks. In the Golgari deck, Reclamation Sage is a great utility creature. It can destroy the Boros deck's Luminous Bonds or any other enchantment-based removal such as Seal Away or Ixalan's Binding. The biggest downside of Reclamation Sage is that it's a 2/1 for 3 mana. If we want a bigger creature, we can swap in Thrashing Brontodon at the same converted mana cost. The higher toughness will allow it to survive combat with a wider range of the Boros deck's creatures, and it dodges the direct damage spells. There's also the advantage that you can choose when to sacrifice it to destroy an enchantment, which could matter in a longer game. Swarm Guild Mage allows us to gain life in a pinch, or we can push through that extra bit of damage just when we need it. While both decks have over 20 creatures, non-creature spells are a crucial part of deck building. On the Boros side, Dual Shot is really good at getting rid of the 1 toughness creatures our opponents control, like Llanowar Elves or Reclamation Sage. We can also use it to deal that last point of damage to their creatures that were in combat this turn. However, it's usually better to keep our options open with cards like this. Adding 2 more Lightning Strikes is a good way to go, or if we really feel the lower casting cost is where we want to be, Shock is a good alternative. If we want more creature removal, Justice Strike uses our opponent's high amount of power against themselves. The Luminous Bonds in the deck is a good way to remove the bigger creatures from combat when our red spells can't quite get there. There are a couple of alternatives or additions that we can add to the deck though. Seal Away can exile a creature at instant speed, including one that just attacked but hasn't dealt damage yet. And even though Ixalan's Binding costs 1 more mana than Luminous Bonds, it does prevent our opponent from playing any more copies of that card. Another option to consider is Settle the Wreckage. It exiles all of our opponent's attacking creatures, which is great when we can get rid of multiple creatures on their side. But it does let them go get more lands to cast their big spells, so it really comes down to personal preference. In the Golgari deck, Impale is an okay removal spell, but there's definitely more effective options available. From Core Set 2019, Murder does everything that Impale does, but for 1 cheaper and at instant speed. If we don't anticipate our opponents playing any legendary creatures, we can also try Cast Down, which reduces the price to 2 mana but keeps the instant speed. And if we really want to get rid of their creatures, we can play Vraska's Contempt, which also has a small life gain bonus. Want to kill a creature with a creature? This deck already has 1 Ravenous Chupacabra, why not more? With each of these decks playing 24 lands, there will be times when we'll have lots of mana and not a lot to do with it. That's when we need to kick it. Dominaria gave us some great kicker spells to sink our extra mana into. Fight with Fire is a powerful sorcery that deals 5 damage to a creature for only 3 mana, which is a great way to get rid of some of those bigger green creatures. If we draw it late in the game, we can kick it to deal 10 damage wherever and however we want. You get a damage, and you get a damage, and you get a damage! Another powerful kicker card is Keldon Overseer. Not only is it an aggressive 3/1 with haste, but late in the game it can steal one of our opponent's creatures. We can either clear their best blocker out, or finish the game with the extra points of damage. To help our Golgari deck reach the high end of the curve, we can add Grow from the Ashes. For 3 mana, it grabs a basic land from our deck and puts it into the battlefield untapped. If we draw it later in the game, we get 2 lands, which helps to thin our deck, allowing us to find more threats. One of those threats could be Untamed Kavu, which is a 2/2 for 2 with Vigilance and Trample, but it gets bigger if we wait just a few turns. Now let's look at big finishers in both the decks. In Boros, we have Shivan Dragon, Burning Sun's Avatar, Sarah's Guardian, Demanding Dragon, and Charging Monstrosaur. If we want to go with more dragons, Lathless Dragon Queen makes tokens off of each non-token dragon that enters the battlefield on our side, and it can pump all of our dragons, while Varric's Bladewing brings another dragon in if it's kicked. On the dinosaur side, we can start playing with our opponent's cards with Atali Primal Storm, or we can force them to sacrifice permanents with Silverclad Ferocidons. In the Golgari deck, we have Verdant Sun's Avatar, Polaka Worm, Galta Primal Hunger, and Gravewaker. Other options include cards like Twilight Prophet, which can block the Boros deck's smaller creatures and flyers while dealing them damage in the long run. We can also use Josu Vest's Lich Knight, which has Menace to force them to block with more than 1 creature, and it can be held back for a huge kicker, creating 8 2/2 zombies with Menace. On the green side, Tendershoot Dryad can eventually build up a huge army if left unchecked, and Multani Yavamaya's Avatar becomes bigger the more lands we play. Out of the 24 lands in both decks, 20 of them are basics, and 4 will make either color, but they do enter the battlefield tapped. We can either take those out and add cards like Woodland Cemetery and Clifftop Retreat, which have a high chance of entering the battlefield untapped based on how many basics we have, or we can just play them side by side. Because no Ravnica set would be complete without them, we also have the option of running the Shocklands, Overgrown Tomb, and Sacred Foundry. That way we have the option of paying the 2 life if we want them to enter the battlefield untapped. And that's our upgrades for the Spellslinger Starter Kit. I'm Jeremy Knoll, and I hope we gave you some ideas on where to take these decks, whether it's the kitchen table or at Friday Night Magic. If you have any other ideas, let us know in the comments. And as always, good luck and have fun.